Right, so here we are. I started attaching this last panel last night, but I ran out of light, so I stopped. Now, one thing which is a bit of a disaster, I was lining up this panel so that I could fit the OSB from the other side would fit underneath it, and then I was going to have this across, but of course then I remembered that I'm going to have a wall covering on this side as well. So I've moved it out further, possibly not quite as deep as the wall covering, but deeper than it was, because I want this to come to the edge of the other wall covering. So what I should have done was position this here and cut this effectively here, so I've got this whole flat piece, and then I could have just trimmed it down the side when I fitted the wall covering, or at least when I know what the dimensions of the wall covering. So I'm going to do that with this end. When I attach this end, I will cut it right at the edge of the raised piece. The other end I'll cut here, so I've got as much of this as possible to go over the wall, and then I'll just trim it down when I'm fitting that covering. Anyway, so now I'm just drilling these holes. So one thing I did, because this sheet is quite narrow, I hooked over the second sheet and just made sure that the tops lined up. So I've got these running down vertically. Not that it's absolutely critical, but I wanted the top to be flush. For the actually, I don't need the top to be flush at all. Anyway, I wanted the top to be flush. So I'm just going through. I was going to do a pattern of bolts, but in fact I think I've got enough to do the whole thing, so I'm just going to do all of them. I'm going to do all the way down that side anyway, and then maybe I'll do them interspersed. I don't think I need to attach every single point. Anyway, so I'm just going to get attaching these on now. Drill some more holes. So So I've got these tech screws, which I'm using to attach the front with. Now it's got kind of a, tech screw, it's got kind of a drill cutting piece on the front of it. I did try to just drill straight through, but what happened is it went through the panel, and then while I was trying to cut through the resilient bar, the panel just rode up the screw, and then when I actually got through the resilient bar and tried to screw it down, there was a gap between the two. So what I'm having to do is drill a hole in the panel that the screw can fit through, and then I'm just using the tech screw to just drill through and cut into the resilient bar, and then that holds it all together nice and tight. Yeah, I'm just using the screw, and then that bolts it down tight. And then it's got this fibre plastic washer that provides the seal, and then you just put the cap on, except I asked for anthracite caps. Yeah, they might be. They're not a great colour match though. They were supposed to be the same colour. They look black compared to that. Right. Okay. Just going to go through the process of drilling the hole. So I put the drill bit in. I've marked here where I want to drill it. Just keep going until it breaks through. Take the drill bit out. And that's it. Put on the cap. So it's quite tedious having to swap the drill bit over all the time, so I'm just going to put the different rows of, I'm going to drill all the holes and then do the screws. Right, so that's the first panel all screwed on. I was going to use less. I think I've done it a bit overkill, but I've got colour coded caps and I've got all the tech screws. I've got no other reason to use them, so I'm just going to be hanging on to them. If I was doing more of these, then I'd feed the spares into the next job, but you know, I'm not, so. Right, now we need to get this next panel across and do the riveting. So there's the snap rivet in place. That's a very good colour match, so I'm very pleased with that. Now, one of the reasons I'm putting this metal covering on the back, one is it's low maintenance as I can't get to it, but the other is all of this ivy, and I don't want that getting into the back covering, which is why I went for metal. So I'm going to be riveting this every 20 centimetres, which is quite a lot, but I want to make sure no little bits of leaf start getting their way in and breaking through. So, a lot of holes, a lot of drilling. Let's show you the process. So these rivets are 3.2 millimeters. I've got a drill bit here which is 3.5. I'm just going to position this in the middle of that lip and drill it through. Yeah. Try not to drill into the house wrap. Put the rivet in the hole. Put the rivet to the top. Push down firmly and close it. Let it go. Push it down again. And that's it. Done. A couple of other points. I'm drilling and riveting each one of these as it goes, just in case there's any movement when I rivet it down that it's in a slightly different place. The other thing is, when you're riveting, certainly with a handgun like that, push hard for when you do the first pull, squeeze on the trigger, to make sure that the two sheets are pushed together, and the other end of the rivet then pulls up and draws the two together. Once you've done that first one, you don't really need to apply pressure, because what happens if you do, when it pops out, it's inclined to bash down, and you can scratch the finish, which I did on that one. So I'm pushing down on the first one, make sure they're tight, and then when I'm getting to where I think it's going to click, I'm actually lifting up so that when it clicks away, the thing bounces away. And the other thing is, I know I was going to have to lean on these sheets, so these offcuts of insulation come in really handy. I can just lean on them without any fear of damaging or bending or scratching the panels. So I'm just going to crack on and finish the rest of this one, and then I'll get on to screwing this other panel down. Okay, things got a little bit out of hand. I had some help available, so I rushed to get the walls on, get the panels on, and get it up, and so I didn't manage to do any videoing. But there's nothing particularly unusual. I just carried on and put the rest of the panels on. It took 3 of us to lift the wall. It was quite heavy, and I had 2 spotters at the front corners there, one on each side, to make sure they were lined up properly. So you can see here, there's the wood set back Not quite as much as I hoped, but the problem is the metal on the supports on the piles has stopped it from going all the way back. But it's 5 mil. Same at the other end. So I set the two, pulled the corners back as far as they would go and screwed them in, the two corners, and then you can see I've rung a line along the front, so I then attach this piece of wood, which I could then use to pull back to position the rest of it. I did one in the middle, first one in the middle, and it didn't seem quite straight, so I then pulled in at the 2/4 as well. So that's all screwed in now, and it's leaning backwards, leaning that way at the moment, but it's just supported. It's not going anywhere. Sorry about that. So now I'm going to have a cup of coffee and start making the walls. I'll do this wall first because this wall's plain. There's no windows in it. There's a window in this one, so it's going to be slightly trickier to make, but it's coming on. You can see the brackets here, sticks out about 15 mil, I suppose. Here, this bracket on the front, which I hadn't really allowed for, and there on the back then, which is holding the back wall out a bit further than it should be. I mean, look at this one's hanging out much further. But you've got to get them behind it, covered by the thing, otherwise water will fall in there and it'll just start rusting and rotting. So, here's what it is. Okay, confession time. Really confession because I'm a bit embarrassed. So, you see the back wall plate sitting along there, no problem at all. As it comes across here, you'll see it's sitting proud of the floor. So, the reason that's happened is because when I was attaching the panels, I didn't run a line along it and make sure that that bottom plate was straight. So the panels are on it now and there's no way that's going to bend down. I've put some big screws in to try and pull it down, but it won't pull down. And to be honest, if it did, I'd be worried anyway. Because once those panels are on the back, there's no racking, twisting or anything. So I'm going to have to put some packing under there just to help support that. So that's an important tip. If you're making a blind wall like this where you have to put all the panels on while it's on the ground, make sure that your sole plate is straight. Okay, that's not the end of the world. Calculating the height, or measuring the height of the wall here, so I've got a bottom plate and a top plate. Those are the two offcuts from the top plate, and that's just going to measure from there up to the top of the wall, so I don't have to measure and calculate what these are. Right, so there's all the pieces for the side wall, 400 centres, marked all those, cut all the studs to length, just going to screw them together now. I've pre-drilled all the holes so that I get a good pull in for the right, I can't remember if I've already done this, but here I've screwed in the other end and it's straight, but this end there's a bit of a twist in it. Now I've lined up this bottom one and screwed that in, Now I need to straighten this top one. So put that on there. Tighten it up, and then as I'm screwing it in, I just pull that down. Pull it a little bit too far because it slackens off a bit once you've done it. And there we go. Nice flush joint. When you're screwing in these studs, there's bits of grit on the floor, and it's also quite near to there's not a lot of clearance right next to the floor. So by stacking these up on these pieces of wood gives you clearance, but also because this wood's quite a small piece, this piece is a small piece, so it there's no undulation or anything in it, so I can put this piece on it and then it gives me a really good alignment because both of the bottoms are just resting on that piece. So I just put that like that and then screw it in. Now I'm putting the skins on this side panel and I'm using the good edge of the board here to make it square. I'm assuming, and I think it's generally safe to assume that the boards come square. So I've very carefully lined up the top of the sheet along the upper plate and right tight against this end. There's no gap there at all. And then I just have to pull this end to align. It's not going to stay. I guess I'll just have to hold it. Right, so that's then aligned. So I'm expecting that to be square. I'll just get some screws. I can screw that in when it's done. And that should then be square.